What's up, everybody? Todd Zilla here with Zilla Fantasy Elite coming at you with the Thursday Night Theory. We're going to just drop right into it right away. Woo, welcome in. All right, folks, let's get into it. This is where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches. We always hear the games for football are won and lost in the trenches. Why the heck does nobody look at the play in the trenches to determine what is going to happen in the game? I don't know, but that's what we do here. We provide that service. We look into that information for you by using the adjusted line play report. So that's what we're going to get into. Island game matchup. I've had somebody ask, what's an island game? It's essentially any game that's on national TV. It's the only game going on at that time. So ones that qualify: Thursday night football, Sunday night football, Monday night football. Those are the common ones. And then anytime we get a game over in London, that's just a solo game that everybody can watch. That is also an island game. So island game matchup, Thursday night football here. San Francisco at Seattle. San Francisco actually 3.5-point road favorites. So we look at that. Vegas game total, a healthy 47.5 points. So that's not too bad when you start to look into, total scoring. That's probably a decent offensive output. That Vegas game total gives San Francisco a team implied total of 27.5. We have Seattle at 22. And then the first step we're going to do, we're going to look at the away team, and we're just going to go ahead and zoom right in on this matchup for you guys so you can kind of see what we're looking at. So offensive pass protection, offensive pass DVOA versus defensive pass rush and defensive pass DVOA. Just looking at it in isolation, here is our matchup. San Francisco's offensive pass protection is 17th. Seattle, number 4 in defensive pass rush. Please remember that this is an adjusted sack rate. This is basically saying how good the offense and defensive line is at getting sacks or preventing sacks. So San Francisco, middle of the pack at 17 for offensive pass protection. Seattle, number 4 in defensive pass rush. That means they're getting sacks when they are getting pressure, which is good for them. That might mean Brock Purdy is going to be under pressure a little bit in this, needing to get the ball out a little bit quicker. Typically, that's going to mean passes to like George Kittle, the tight ends, the running backs get a few more dump offs, and then any of the shorter route tree wide receivers. So that would probably be Kittle and Deebo Samuel in a matchup like this being the biggest beneficiaries. I know we saw Ayuk have a really good game last week. It might be a different story this week where it's going to be Deebo and Kittle and maybe Mason getting a few of those dump offs in the pass game. And then we're looking at the pass DVOA. That's the next thing over here to the right. So number 2 for San Francisco's offense and pass DVOA. Seattle number 12 in the defensive pass DVOA. So again, these are middle of the road versus a pretty good one. So green is good. That's top 10. Red is bottom 10. And then anything else is in the middle. So we have San Francisco actually number 2 in pass DVOA. So that's basically saying compared to what the NFL average is on certain plays. So it takes all the down and distance and game situation into play. So for instance, 2nd down and 3, you're at the opponent's 43-yard line and it's a neutral game. So it's within 8 points of each other. This is an average run play. This is an average pass play depending on what you do. On an offense, let's just say it's a run play. Average run play on this will net 4 yards. You get 5, well, that's a net bonus, but let's say it's against a really good defense, it's going to count for even more. So it's a defensive adjusted value over average. So if you're doing that against a really good defense, it probably means your offensive line is a little bit better even than just the average line or somebody getting that. So number 12 here for defensive pass DVOA, again, taking into consideration if it was a run play, if you stop them or you do better than what that average is, you're going to be a little bit better and you're going to get a better score in that. So Seattle 12, not bad. They're a little bit above average, but San Francisco number 2. So in general, from a play-to-play basis, this is going to be not too bad. They might be under pressure, but they should be pretty effective when they do pass the ball. So that's basically saying Kittle and Deebo should do pretty well when they do get the ball in their hands in that pass game. Now getting to The other one, which is run blocking, we have San Francisco's offensive run blocking and run DVOA versus Seattle's defensive run stopping and defensive run DVOA. So San Francisco, number 4 in offensive run blocking. That's green. Seattle, number 24 in defensive run stopping. That's red. It's a red-green matchup saying this is really heavily in the favor of San Francisco. And how does this differ? Like offensive run DVOA, as I kind of had just mentioned, it's against the NFL average. The run blocking and run stopping aspect basically says, hey, it's a different calculation that says if you had a negative play on a run play, it's really good for your defense. It's really bad for your offensive line. That's basically all on your offensive line that it got stopped behind the line of scrimmage. That's like the worst case scenario. If you got like a 0-yard gain, a 1-yard gain, basically saying, hey, your offensive line's still not very good, but not as bad as a negative play. And then it goes in like a couple yard chunks. So a 3 to 5 yard chunk counts for maybe a standard offensive run blocking or standard defensive run stopping, nothing to write home about. And then anything, 5 to 10 yards is going to be, wow, that's really good. Your offensive line was really good, or your defensive line was really bad on that play, or your run stopping was really bad. And then anything 10 plus would be like the worst, right? So, wow, 10 plus yard run. Offensive line had to do a really good job of that, but after that certain situation, you've basically kind of done away with all the line play at that point. Anything beyond 10 yards is probably as a result of that running back doing a lot of the work. So that's kind of how that works. But based on this is basically saying San Francisco going to gain positive yardage on each of their run plays, but then in terms of run DVOA, in those situations where you'd expect them to be a little bit better, they might not get as far. So kind of think of it as explosive plays. San Francisco probably not going to be very explosive in the run game, but you're probably going to see a lot of 3 to 6 yard gains out of Mason in this particular matchup. You're just not going to see those big long gains, which would really boost up the DVOA in that case. All right, now that we looked at the home team or the away team, let's look at the home team in this particular matchup. It is Seattle. They're number 20 in offensive pass protection, so below average. San Francisco, number 5. Again, Seattle should also be under pressure in this particular matchup, which means favorable for dump-offs to the running backs, shorter route people, which is usually tight ends. I think for Seattle, this is going to favor Jackson Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett. I think they're more of the underneath people. And then you get people like DK Metcalf who are running with the more intermediate and deeper routes. I think it's going to be a fade on him in this particular island matchup in terms of getting him for any sort of DFS lineup. Now, the defensive pass DVOA, San Francisco number 4, so they're green there. Seattle almost inside the top 10 at number 11. Not as quite of a big mismatch here as the adjusted sack rate, but this is basically telling us Seattle, they're going to be under pressure. They're not going to be super explosive when they're passing the ball. They're just going to have to probably dink and dunk their way down the field in order to be effective in their pass game. It's going to be somewhat of a struggle there for them. And then getting into the run game, this looks like the better opportunity for Seattle's offense to move the ball. Seattle number 18 in run blocking, San Francisco 23, indicative that Seattle probably going to be, more in that positive range when they do run the ball throughout the entire matchup. And then in terms of explosive plays, Seattle number 5 in offensive run DVOA, San Francisco number 17. So, Seattle, it's not as good of a matchup as we had with San Francisco's run blocking, where they're probably going to get positive yards all the time. Seattle probably going to be a little bit more effective at gaining positive yardage than they're otherwise used to in this matchup. And then they might actually be very explosive in the run game. So this is telling me could be a Kenneth Walker type evening for Seattle, and that's probably where they're going to lean a lot of their offense on, is through Kenneth Walker. As I'd already mentioned, they're going to need to get the ball out quick, and they're not going to be super explosive regarding that aspect in the pass game. So Kenneth Walker really looking like he's going to be the one getting a few extra targets and the one that's going to be effective moving the ball for the Seattle offense, combined with some lower ADOT passes. And then San Francisco maybe struggling to produce any explosive plays running the ball, but they should be getting positive yardage on a play-by-play basis. And then that pass game, You're going to need a little bit quicker passes, but they should be pretty explosive in the pass game. So Debo and Kittle should be pretty good there. Then last thing we typically look at, pace of play. San Francisco really slow. They're basically all red across the board here except for the offensive pace of play when it's within 8 points. The neutral situation, though, that's within 8 points in the first 3 quarters outside of the 2-minute drill. So 30th overall pace of play is 30th. They're not very fast. Seattle, the exact opposite, number 4, number 3 in overall pace of play and offensive neutral situation. They're actually the number 1 fastest team in the offensive pace of play when it's within 8 points. So very fast. They do slow down if they're leading by 7+ points, but I don't see that being particularly the case in here. We did see it's a 3.5 Vegas line. Just kind of with how the pass games looked in this, in the Vegas game total 47.5. I'm not so sure this game reaches that over/under in if you're a betting person or you can place bets in your state. I would be fine betting the under in this. 42, 45 points I think is probably a little bit more appropriate based off of what I'm seeing on here. And all right, that's going to do it for the Thursday night theory. This is kind of what we do. We go over these matchups, kind of explain them, so when we get to the big ones on Sunday, or if you're looking at the Twitter handle at Todzilla1337 on the weekend, you can look at those and maybe diagnose what's going to go on in that game yourself versus having to listen to me drone on my weekly show. I don't mind if you do, but if you want to do your own analysis, that's always encouraged here at Zilla Fantasy Elite. So thanks for tuning in to the Thursday Night Theory. If you missed last week's, absolutely blew the wheels off, said Darnell Mooney and Kirk Cousins and Drake London were going to go off, and that's exactly what we saw. I said that it was going to be a big barn burner. I think we had Tampa Bay there, and I said the pass game there is going to do well, and we saw Baker Mayfield, I think, had 160 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half. Didn't really do anything in the second half, but again, just a line play report, pretty accurate stuff. A lot of times, nothing's going to be 100%, but I think this is a good 65 to 75% accuracy thing where we can use this offensive and defensive line play where that game is won and lost, right? So we're using that information to say, hey, this is how this game's probably going to go. And 65 to 75% of the time, it seems like it's spot on what should be going on in the game. All right, that's going to do it, folks. I hope you learned something and we can go win some money together. All right, peace.